comment,
and subscribe for more content.
Where's the notification bell?
It's to the right of you.
Oh.
What's up, guys? Welcome to this very special edition of a Funko Popcast. I'm DK Wrestler.
And I'm MD Shaddy.
And today is a very special podcast, like I mentioned. 1 year in the making. It is the top 50 Funko Pops of 2020. I have been waiting pretty much a full calendar year to do this because I was pumped when we did top 50 Funko Pops of 2019, which for the top 50 list, we kind of decided how everything was going to go through 3 different categories. So first one is overall hype, which basically I actually looked through comments throughout social media platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and then detail and personal reaction ratings are the other 2, which basically MD and I had decided to do ratings out of 10, and we basically add our numbers together, divided by 2 to get a median number. More on how we got what would be called overall score. It'll be listed in the description below if you want to know how that goes. But this also made it easier for us because it definitely would have been a difficult time for us to agree what would be the number 1 pop, what would be number 50. So this was a little easier on our part, but we ended up choosing 50 pops, not in the sake of like we personally would like all 50 of them, but we felt overall were actually like the 50 best pops through a lot of these categories. So I will mention that I'm going to mention all the pops and all their ratings, and then basically MD's going to explain his thoughts overall of the Funko Pop and basically on whether each of the pops deserve to be in that spot or not. And then if I have anything to add, I will add it just so that we can save some time. So without further ado, let's kick off with number 50. So coming in at number 50, it is number 596 in the Pop Games lineup. From Pokemon, it is Cubone. Now, Cubone had an overall hype rating of 7.3, detail rating of 7.2, and a personal reaction rating of 6.6, giving it an overall score, which all of these scores will be out of 10, of 7.03, which, little known fact actually, not to really spoil last year's list, but number 50 on our list last year was also a Pokemon pop. So coincidental that Pokemon's making it at number 50. So what do you got to say about Cubone?
I honestly think that Cubone fell right into the right spot. This is a great pop. It looks amazing. It is one of the best Pokemon pops just because of how much it actually looks like if you were to just have a Cubone figure. But at the same time, it does have those pop eyes, so you can totally tell that it is a Funko Pop. I love this pop, and I really do think it was one of the best 50 pops of the year.
We'll move on to number 49, which we got ourselves number 2 in the Pop Retro Toys lineup, and it's the same name as it's a part of. It is Mr. Potato Head. Now, Mr. Potato Head had an overall hype rating of 4.7, detail rating of 7.3, and personal reaction rating of 9.2, giving it an overall score of 7.07, 0.04 higher than Cubone.
I am in love with this pop. I think it should have been higher up on the list. I think it could have broke the 30s even. I think it is criminal how this pop got treated on this list, honestly. It's kind of a personal opinion because Mr. Potato Head has forever been one of my favorite toys of all time, and obviously we really want to see a Toy Story branded one. But I also love the retro toys, and this pop looks phenomenal, looks so good, and I think that even with those pop eyes, it just turned out so amazing.
Yeah, I think it should have went up higher too, but not by much. Like, I think it would have been in the early 40s, in my opinion. I think with the 4.7, that's kind of how it got really low on that list, is that overall hype. But it's not because people hated this pop. It's because this pop was announced with like 10 other retro toys pops. You had like Stretch Armstrong, Glowworm, the G.I. Joe pop. So there's just so many fandoms within the retro toys pops that like it had to essentially share the hype. Not everyone was talking about Mr. Potato Head at that point. So now coming in at number 48, this is number 678 in the Pop Marvel lineup. It is the Blacklight Carnage. Now, this was a Funko Shop exclusive with an overall hype rating of 5.3, detail rating of 8, and a personal reaction rating of 8.2, giving it an overall rating of 7.17, 0.10 higher than Mr. Potato Head.
This Blacklight Carnage is pretty cool. I love the way the colors look, but it's just a Blacklight pop. And I think there was a lot of huge announcements this year that definitely could have broke the 50 mark that didn't. But this Carnage is cool.
All right, moving on to number 47 is number 743 in the pop animation lineup. From the Flintstones, it is the glow in the dark Great Gazoo. Now, this was an Emerald City Comic Con shared with Funko Shop exclusive. This had an overall hype of 6.1, detail of 8, and personal reaction of 7.6, giving it an overall score of 7.23.
I love the Great Gazoo, and I think Funko did a really, really great job on this pop. I think it stands right about where it should, though, on this list. I don't think there's a lot of pops that it definitely isn't better than, but there are a lot of pops that it is better than. It is right around where it should be on the list.
Coming in at number 46, this is number 1 in the pop albums lineup from Notorious B.I.G. It is the Ready to Die pop albums. And this had an overall hype rating of 6.9, detail rating of 6.7, and a personal reaction rating of 8.3, giving it an overall score of 7.3.
I think this pop should have been way higher on the list. One reason is because it is a whole new kind of lineup that Funko is doing with the pop albums, which is so cool. I can't wait to own them all. And not only that, but this is a great album, in my opinion, to start on. Ready to Die is a very, very great album. And obviously, Notorious B.I.G. is one of those, like, the great rappers of all time, I guess is what some people would call him. And this is a really iconic cover to an album, too, with the baby. And I think they did a great job. And I honestly think that the overall hype from fans should have been way more because these pop albums are just so great.
I think with the hype, I remember when looking at the comments, it wasn't so much they didn't like the idea of pop albums. I think it was the fact that they decided to use this album as the very first pop albums to be released. Like, you see the ones that ended up releasing later, like Back in Black, Black Sabbath, some albums that I feel like people were hyping more than this one. All right, so moving on to number 45. This is number 24 in the Pop Icons lineup. This is the black and white variant of Marilyn Monroe. Now, this is an Entertainment Earth exclusive. It has an overall hype rating of 8.9, detail rating of 7.4, and personal reaction rating of 6.6, giving it an overall score of 7.63.
Ready to Die should have at least been in front of Marilyn Monroe, in my opinion. This is a great pop. I love this pop. But at the same time, it's not like something crazy that had me like popping huge when it came out.
Moving on to number 44. It is number 337 in the Pop Heroes lineup from the 1989 Batman movie. It is the chase variant of the 1989 Joker. This was an overall hype rating of 8.5, detail rating of 8.3, and personal reaction rating of 6.3, giving it an overall score of 7.83.
This is a pretty cool chase. It's not one of my favorite chases of the year, but it is a pretty cool pop as well. And I think it stands right about where it should on the top 50 list.
We'll move on to number 43, which this is actually a Pop Games 2-pack from the PlayStation lineup. It is Ratchet and Clank. This 2-pack was exclusive to EB Games / GameStop, in which this had a overall hype rating of 7 with a detail rating of 8.5 and then a personal reaction rating of 8.1, giving it an overall score of 7.87, making it 0.04 higher than Chase Joker.
Yeah, I love this 2-pack. This is so great. And I think it could have been higher up on the list, but that's hard to say because there are a lot of great pops to come still. But this 2-pack is amazing. I would say it's probably up there for my favorite 2-pack of the year. The detail on this thing is just so crazy. I love it. And I'm really enjoying the kind of new PlayStation lineup, I guess you could call it. I think it could have made it possibly a little bit higher, but where it is pretty damn good.
All right, moving on to number 42. This is also from the PlayStation lineup, but this is actually number 91 in the Pop Rides lineup. And that is the Sweet Tooth and Ice Cream Truck, which this also was an EB Games slash GameStop exclusive, which had an overall hype rating of 6.7, detail of 9.1, and personal reaction of 7.9, giving it an overall score out of 10 of 7.9.
Yeah, I can definitely see this being up there, and it's unfortunate that it made it past Ratchet and Clank because personally I like that two-pack better than this Pop Rides. But this thing does have a crazy amount of detail, and I do really think that that's what helped it get the little bit of a push that it needed to beat the Ratchet and Clank two-pack. This thing looks great.
It's so awesome how for the Twisted Metal video game, which is where this is from, it's so awesome that we're getting pop rides because essentially that's how it is, that whole game. It's like you're driving in a vehicle and you're using essentially any blasters that are attached to your car to like knock out other cars. And so I can't wait for potential, like, I guess, extra Twisted Metal pop rides. I think that'd be amazing. So now we'll move on to number 41 on this top 50 list, which is a part of one of MD's favorite lineups, the Add Icons lineup. It is number 84 in the Pop Add Icons lineup from Morton. It is the Diamond Collection Morton Salt Girl. This was a box lunch exclusive in which it had an overall hype rating of 9.4, detail of 7.3, and personal reaction of 7.1, giving it an overall score of 7.93, 0.03 higher than the Sweet Tooth Pop Rides.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that this pop made it so far. I think I would have been very happy with just seeing it sit like right at 50. I don't love this pop, but I also don't really dislike it. I kind of do like it. And like we discussed when this pop came out, it kind of makes sense to be Diamond Collection, so I give it a pass there. And I'm just surprised of how much hype there was from people in the community.
We're moving on in another set of 10. We are now number 40 to 31. So let's check out the next 10 that we're looking at. So starting at number 40, it is number 577 in the Pop Games lineup from Pokemon. It is Flocked Eevee. Now, this pop was a WonderCon shared with Hot Topic exclusive. This had an overall hype rating of 9.3, detail rating of 7, and a personal reaction rating of 7.7, giving it an overall score of 8 out of 10.
I am in love with this pop. I love what they're doing with most of the flocked Pokemon pops, and this has got to be one of the best one. It's one of those ones that just makes the most sense. This Eevee pop alone looked great, and then when they came out with the flocked one, it was like, okay, I have to have this. I do have it in my collection, and I do think that it is sitting at a pretty good spot. I think it maybe could have made it a couple spots higher potentially.
So moving on to number 39, this is number 1037 in the Pop Television lineup. From the Umbrella Academy, it is Bloody Young Ben. Now, this was a New York Comic Con exclusive limited to 2,000 pieces, and this had an overall hype rating of 8.4, detail of 8.4, and a personal reaction rating of 7.3, giving it an overall score of 8.03, 0.03 higher than Flocked Eevee.
Bloody Young Ben is a really cool pop. I think it looks really great. There's a lot of detail with that blood, and obviously that's like the big part of this pop. I'm kind of surprised that the overall hype didn't make it higher because I feel like there was a ton of hype for this pop. But at the same time, I could see why there would be some bad hype because it is only 2,000 pieces, and I know a lot of people definitely wanted this. I think it sits about right where it should be because this definitely is a great pop.
Yeah, I'm glad that we were actually able to agree upon a Umbrella Academy pop this year, considering, well, first of all, we didn't even think that there was going to be an Umbrella Academy pop releasing this year. But last year, we had discussed putting Klaus on the list. And usually when we talk about these pops, we always have to agree on the pop before it makes it on the list. And when I suggested let's put Klaus on there, MD said no. And so when that happens, we had to take Klaus off of that list, which ended up being in the honorable mentions. But I'm glad we were able to agree upon an Umbrella Academy pop because this is a very great one. I think this honestly may be the best Umbrella Academy pop that Funko has made besides that Klaus Hargreaves. So going on to number 38, it is a Pop Marvel 2-pack, and that is the Spider-Man versus Spider-Man 2-pack Now, this was an Entertainment Earth exclusive with an overall hype of 7.7, detail of 8, and personal reaction of 8.5, giving it a overall score of 8.07, 0.04 higher than Bloody Young Ben.
When this got announced, I was almost in tears of laughter because this is so great. Obviously, this moment in Spider-Man happened years and years ago, but without the hype of that kind of newer meme, this never would have been made, and I'm so glad that it was because this thing is so awesome, and it's obviously inspiring more kind of meme pops to come out, which is so great. I love this. I think it might be a little bit too high up on the list, though. Even though this is a hilarious 2-pack, there's not a whole lot that's crazy about this. It's kind of just a couple mediocre Spider-Man figures. It's just the whole meme, I guess, is why this thing is so great. But the actual pops aren't amazing.
So moving on to number 37, in which this pop is number 632 in the Pop Games lineup. From the Sonic the Hedgehog 30th anniversary lineup, it is the Flocked Classic Sonic. Now, this was a Funko Shop exclusive with an overall hype of 8.3, detail of 8.3, and personal reaction rating of 7.8, giving it an overall score of 8.13.
This is arguably the best Sonic Pop we've seen to date. This looks so great. I love that this one's flocked, and I can't wait to add it to my collection. I also love what they did with the translucent red to kind of show his feet spinning around, and I can't wait to see it in person because I think it's just going to be such a great pop. I honestly think it could have probably made it a bit higher, not too much though.
This actually basically just made the list because this was only released as we're recording this, like I would say 2 or 3 weeks ago. So by the time we had all of these, this was like one of the last, I believe, 6 pops we decided that we wanted to add to this top 50 list. So I'm glad we were able to, because Sonic is going to be a great lineup, especially going into 2021 when the 30th anniversary actually happens, which Funko, if you're listening, hopefully we see Knuckles in 2021, and that would probably make our top 50 list, to be honest. So coming in at number 36, it is number 584 in the Pop Marvel lineup. That is the Avengers Assemble Iron Man Pop Deluxe from Avengers, in which this was an Amazon exclusive. This had a 9.4 in overall hype, 7.6 in detail, and 7.5 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.17.
Now, this pop is pretty cool. I don't have a crazy personal reaction to this, but I do think it is the best of the Avengers Assemble pops. And this was the first one that was announced, correct?
It is the first one that was announced.
Okay, yeah. These are really cool. I love the idea of the Avengers Assemble pops. So one of them making the top 50 list just makes sense because it's something new. I love how the bases go together, and I hope we see that for a lot of different series and franchises and stuff like that because it's just such a great idea.
Coming in at number 35, this is number 581 in the Pop Games lineup from Pokemon. It is Mewtwo. Now, of course, we're talking about the common Mewtwo because it's definitely better than the flocked one, in which this had an overall hype of 7.8, detail of 8.5, and personal reaction of 8.3, giving it an overall score of 8.2.
Mewtwo is a great Pokemon pop. It looks so cool. I love the size of it when you look at it in the box. It looks so good, and it really gives me a lot of hope for one day being able to just look at all 151 original Pokemon on a shelf and have them listed by their actual Pokemon numbers rather than the kind of video game set number, which I currently have them listed under. Yeah, this pop is just so amazing. I love the Mewtwo. I think he does sit around right where he should, but again, he possibly could have been bumped up to maybe breaking the 20s.
This next pop, number 34, is also from the Pokemon lineup. It is number 627 in the Pop Games lineup from Pokemon. Like we said, it is Vaporeon. Now, this had an overall hype rating of 7.8, detail rating of 8.6, and then a personal reaction of 8.3, giving it an overall score of 8.23, 0.03 higher than Mewtwo.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely come very close when it comes to which one is better. I would give the edge to Vaporeon, which makes sense because I think the Vaporeon has a lot of great detail, and in person, this pop looks so amazing.
So now we're going to move on to number 33, which this is number 396 in the Pop Star Wars lineup. This is Darth Revan, in which this was an EB Games / GameStop exclusive. This had an overall hype rating of 8.1, detail of 9, and personal reaction rating of 7.6, giving it an overall score of 8.23, which is also the same as Vaporeon. But the difference is between these two is that Darth Revan had a higher overall hype and detail rating, making its 8.23 essentially higher than Vaporeon.
Yeah, I'd agree that these are like very similar pops for where they would be listed on our list. So this is very accurate. They are very different pops, so it's kind of hard to judge because obviously you can get a lot more detail out of a Darth Revan pop. I love this pop. It looks really, really cool. I love the dual lightsabers, which is great. The costume obviously has a lot of detail. And Darth Revan is just a badass, and this pop looks really, really good. It is one of the best Star Wars pops that have come out this year, that's for sure.
All right, moving on to number 32. This is number 759 in the Pop animation lineup. From Dragon Ball Z, it is the Glow in the Dark Perfect Cell. Now, this was an Emerald City Comic Con shared with Hot Topic exclusive. This had an 8.4 in overall hype, 8.7 in detail, and 7.7 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.3.
Yeah, I own this pop, and it is great. I love the amount of glow-in-the-dark aspects to this pop. It is one of those first pops that we've seen, really, where almost everything is glow-in-the-dark besides, like, some of the face and the black parts of the pop. There's not a whole lot more you can say about this because it is a Perfect Cell pop, and we've seen Perfect Cell before, but just how much glow-in-the-dark is on this pop is so cool.
All right, so going on to number 31. This is number 979 in the Pop Disney lineup from the movie Up. It is the Carl and Ellie Pop movie moments. Now, this was a New York Comic Con exclusive shared with Box Lunch, in which this had a 9.8 in overall hype, 9.6 in detail, and a 5.6 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.33, 0.03 higher than Perfect Cell.
Yeah, this pop is wonderful. It looks so cool. I love how much detail is on the base. The pops themselves are just all right, but when you pull it all together, it is so amazing, honestly. And I can see this being very high up on a lot of people's top 10 lists this year. If you look at the overall hype with a 9.8, that is a crazy score. And then detail 9.6. Personal reaction is a little bit lower, obviously, because just for us, we both like the movie Up. But this isn't a pop that we would probably buy. So that's the only reason why this pop didn't make it to like a top 10 list, let's say.
All right, so now we're moving in now to 30 to 21. So we're almost finished with essentially the bottom half of this entire list. So starting off with number 30, and I know MD personally likes this one, it is number 680 in the Pop animation lineup. From Johnny Bravo, it's, of course, the man himself, Johnny Bravo. Now, this was a Funko Shop exclusive. This had a rating of 9 out of 10 for overall hype, 7.7 in detail, and 8.4 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.37.
Yeah, I mean, being a cartoon character that isn't from an anime, let's say, you're not going to get a super crazy amount of detail. So that makes sense why that score is a little bit lower. But at the same time, this is really, really cool. I mean, that body is hilarious. I love it. It is very new for a pop body to kind of look like that and kind of be so animated. The head is great as well. The hair looks really, really awesome. The glasses are cool. I love how they had it kind of extra little bit of detail with having the one eyebrow raised. If they didn't have that, I think the score would have been even lower than it is. But I think that it sits right around where it should on our list. I love this pop, and I definitely think it is in the top 30.
All right, so moving on now to number 29. It is number 835 in the Pop animation lineup. From SpongeBob SquarePants, it's Barnacle Boy. Now, this was a New York Comic Con exclusive shared to Entertainment Earth. This had an overall hype of 8.4, detail of 7.8, and personal reaction of 8.9, giving it an overall score of 8.37, the exact same overall score as Johnny Bravo, except the fact that Barnacle Boy had a higher detail and personal reaction rating, therefore making its 8.37 essentially higher than Johnny Bravo.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know which one of these two pops I like better. I love the Johnny Bravo, but I also really, really love the Barnacle Boy. I do think it does have a bit more detail, and obviously there is a bit more hype because SpongeBob obviously is way more well known than Johnny Bravo. These are great pops, and again, like I said, with it being an animated TV show, it's hard to bring a lot of that detail through. But I think, again, with both of these pops, the poses are really, really good. But the facial expression on Barnacle Boy, I think, is kind of what gives it the edge.
All right, so number 28, which is actually a pop I feel like a lot of people are going to be surprised about. This is number 576 on the Pop Games lineup. From Dungeons and Dragons, it is the Gelatinous Cube. Now, this was an Emerald City Comic Con exclusive shared to EB Games slash GameStop, in which this had an 8.7 in overall hype, 8.9 in detail, and 7.8 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.47.
This pop is really neat. I mean, it's not the craziest pop, like detail wise or anything like that, but it was something that was so weird and we hadn't really seen before with a pop. And I love that I own this pop. The only gripe I have about this pop, honestly, is the weird kind of box that it comes in, because that kind of makes it a little bit harder to display. But I also love that I have it in my collection. And I think it could have been a little lower on the list, maybe in the 40s, just because it's not something that everyone's going to buy, but it is something that's really, really cool.
All right, so going on to number 27, this is number 949 in the Pop Movies lineup. From the movie Anchorman, it is the Scented Brian Fantana. Now, this was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive shared to the Funko Shop, and this had an 8.2 in overall hype, 8.8 in detail, and 8.5 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of an even 8.5 out of 10.
This pop is really funny. I mean, Brian Fantana is such a cool character, and I love that it's scented, obviously. A lot of the hype around this pop came with, like, oh, what is this going to smell like? And of course, it does smell really, really bad. I can't wait to actually smell one eventually, which kind of sounds funny now that I say that out loud. But at the same time, I kind of want to see exactly what it smells like rather than just hearing people's opinions on it. I really like this pop. I want to own it. I want to have some of those Anchorman pops because they were all really, really great. Such a surprise announcement, I guess you could say. And the Brian Fantana being scented is just kind of like the cherry on top of the cake.
So moving on to number 26, which basically would be the top of this bottom half of this top 50 list. This is number 1032 in the Pop television lineup. From The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, it is The Raven Bart. Now, this was a box lunch exclusive, which had an overall hype of 8.8, detail of 8.5, and personal reaction of 8.3, giving it an overall score of 8.53.
This is another one of those pops where when it came out, I knew I had to have it. By no means is this like one of the greatest pops of all time, but I think it is another one of those pops that's really, really funny. When a lot of people associate Trios of Horror, they associate it to the Raven Bart. I think the books is a really, really good added detail to this pop, and I think that's what makes it so great. I think if it was just the Raven Bart on his own, I think a lot of people would probably actually hate this pop potentially. And I think it is one of the best Trios of Horror pops. Definitely not the very best, but it is really, really great.
All right, so now we are in essentially the top half of the list now, going to number 25, which this is number 373 in the Pop Star Wars lineup. From The Empire Strikes Back, it is the Han Solo with Tauntaun, a part of the Battle at Echo Base Pop Deluxe set. Now, this was exclusive to Amazon, and this had an 8.6 in overall hype, 8.6 in detail, and 8.4 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.53, which is the exact same overall score as the Raven Bart, except the fact that Han Solo had a higher detail and personal reaction rating than Raven Bart, thus making it higher up on the list.
I couldn't think of a more fitting pop to make it right at number 25. This thing is just so mind baffling, I guess you could say. I love how the base looks with the Tauntaun lying down, and honestly, Han Solo turned out pretty great as well, and I love how he's wielding the lightsaber, which is just so great. Now, I can't remember, on the other side of the Tauntaun, is his stomach ripped open or no?
The stomach is not ripped open.
Not ripped open. Okay. Now, if they would have done that, I think that this could have made it a lot higher up because that would have been so cool. And obviously, that is like the most iconic thing out of the Tauntauns. But at the same time, if we had that, then I don't think we would have the lightsaber in Han Solo's hands, or at least it wouldn't be ignited, I guess is the word that I should be using. But I think this falls at the perfect spot at 25.
All right, so moving on to number 24. This is number 972 in the Pop television lineup. From The Office, it is Stanley Hudson. Now, this was an EB Games / GameStop exclusive. This had a 7.5 in overall hype, 8.9 in detail, and a personal reaction rating of 9.2, giving it an overall score of 8.53, the same exact score as the Battle at Echo Base Han Solo Pop Deluxe, except the fact that it has a higher detail rating and personal reaction rating.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how close some of these pops come, but I mean, I guess you gotta expect that when we're rating, I guess, so many pops, and you can't really, like, when it's out of 10, there's definitely going to be some that cut close. Stanley Hudson is a cool pop. I really like this. I think it is a little bit too high up, even though I really, really do enjoy this pop and all of the Office pops for that matter. But I just think there's not enough. I think the Han Solo is better, so seeing this one in front of that is just kind of weird. But at the same time, I'm not too shook, I guess would be the word about it, because I really like this pop and I can't wait to own it.
Then we're going to number 23 on this list. This is number 682 in the Pop Marvel lineup. It is Red Goblin. Now, this was a New York Comic Con exclusive shared to Hot Topic. This had a overall hype of 7.9, detail of 9.3, and personal reaction of 8.5, giving it an overall score of 8.57.
This pop is weird for me. The reason for that is that I'm shocked that it made it this high on the list. I don't think it should have. The reason, obviously, is because of the detail, especially if you look at the numbers with that 9.3. This thing looks really great. I mean, look at all the detail on this thing. There's just so much going on. The paint on this looks so great because there's so many different layers. But I don't think it should have made it this high just because it's not like a crazy character that would have a super amount of hype. But at the same time, I do own this pop, and I think it is really neat.
All right, coming in at number 22, and it's a personal favorite of mine and MD's. This is number 755 in the Pop animation lineup from Yu-Gi-Oh! It is the 6-inch Exodia, the Forbidden One. This had an overall hype of 7.5, detail of 9.3, and a personal reaction of 9, having an overall score of 8.6.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that this made it high up on the list. I think it easily could have broke the top 10 because the detail on this thing is just insane. There's so much going on, like whether it's the what I could guess about 7 to 8 different colors on the pop, and then you have like I guess you could call it like etchings for like cracking of the character, which looks so great. This thing is just so crazy, honestly. I mean, obviously, we talked about it last year where we kind of made a prediction of it possibly being 5 separate pops that you could buy that kind of go together, but at the same time, that doesn't really make sense. It just makes sense for Yu-Gi-Oh fans, I guess.
So now going on to number 21. This is number 894 in the Pop Movies lineup from Billy Madison. It is the Billy Madison in Bathtub Pop Deluxe. This had an overall hype of 7.8, detail of 8.5, and a personal reaction of 9.5, giving it an overall score of 8.6, which is the same as Exodia, except it had a higher overall hype and higher personal reaction rating, thus making it higher than Exodia on this top 50 list.
This pop is great. This moment in the movie is hilarious, and they captured it so well. I just think that Exodia should have been in front of this. Obviously, if I think it should have made the top 10, then where Billy Madison is probably a good spot. I just think that Exodia being before it is kind of just not right.
So now it looks like we're going to be looking at number 20 to number 11. Coming in at number 20, this is number 938 in the Pop television lineup. From The Office, it is Dwight Schrute as Recyclops version 1. Now, this was an Emerald City Comic-Con exclusive shared to Walmart, which this had a 9.3 in overall hype, 8.6 in detail, and 8 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.63.
Yeah, I'm not surprised this made it this high because this is a really nice pop. I mean, there's a good amount of detail with this thing, and it is one of the best Dwight pops, even though there are so many Dwight pops now. But this is definitely the best Recyclops, even though there might be more detail with some of the other ones. And it's honestly my favorite one from that episode anyways. So it makes sense that this was one of the best pops of the year, I guess.
All right, so coming in at number 19, this is number 731 in the Pop animation lineup. From Dexter's Laboratory, of course, it's Dexter, which this was a Funko Shop exclusive, and this had a 9 out of 10 in overall hype, 8.3 in detail, and 8.7 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.67.
I'm really glad this pop made it where it did. I think it sits just about where it should. I don't think it would break like the top 15. So 19 kind of makes a lot of sense in my opinion. I think this pop is spectacular. I mean, I paid a lot of money to get this pop. This and the Johnny Bravo are just so great together. I do think this one is better. Even though I like the Johnny Bravo pop better, I guess, I think this one is a better pop just because it has more detail, and they're both so weird with the way the bodies are. It's so refreshing, and like I said, both of these characters are very animated, which obviously is perfect.
Coming in at number 18, which I know MD is going to have a lot to say about this pop. This is number 832 in the Pop television lineup. From the Simpsons lineup, now this is the normal Simpsons, this is Comic Book Guy. Now, this is a New York Comic Con exclusive shared to Hot Topic. This had an 8.3 in overall hype, 9 in detail, and 8.7 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.67. Although that Dexter has a higher detail rating than Comic Book Guy, and Comic Book Guy has a higher detail rating, and then both of them had the exact same personal reaction rating of 8.7, Comic Book Guy is higher in this case because Dexter's 8.7 was rounded from 8.65, while Comic Book Guy's 8.7 did not have to be rounded. So therefore, Comic Book Guy was higher on this list than Dexter.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually really funny if you crunch down those numbers and think like the 9.0 and the 8.3, and then you look at Comic Book Guy and it's 8.3 to 9.0. And then, of course, both the personal reactions have to be 8.7. So rounding up and doing stuff like that definitely makes a lot of sense to why one pop would be listed higher than the other, or else what would it come down to? Just whatever we thought was what we could agree on which one was better, obviously. In my opinion, I kind of think it is Comic Book Guy that is better because I was waiting for this pop for so long. Whereas Dexter was a nice surprise. This was a pop where it was like, okay, when are we going to see this? When are we going to see another lineup of normal Simpsons pops? Because I was kind of getting sick of the Trios of Horror, even though we did get some amazing pops out of that. But I really want to see more normal Simpsons pops. And this was like top tier on my list of what I wanted to see next. And honestly, they did a better job than I even could have imagined. So this sits about where I think it should. I think it could have made it to like maybe around 14, so just a couple spots higher. But yeah, this is a good spot.
All right, coming in at number 17, it is number 1033 in the Pop television lineup. Coming from the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror lineup, it is Donut Head Homer. Now, this was a Hot Topic exclusive, and this had an overall hype of 8, detail of 9.3, and a personal reaction of 8.8, giving it an overall score of 8.7.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that this made it higher than Comic Book Guy. I mean, I'm not super surprised because this is a damn cool pop. I think I do like Comic Book Guy better, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if, let's say, we watched 5 of these top 50 lists and people had Donut Head Homer higher than Comic Book Guy. So this spot makes sense.
And coming in at number 16, this is number 765 in the Pop television lineup. From the normal Simpsons lineup, it is Millhouse. This was an Emerald City Comic Con exclusive that was shared to Box Lunch. This had a 9 in overall hype, 8.3 in detail, and 8.8 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.7, the exact same score as Donut Head Homer. However, even though that Millhouse had a higher overall hype rating than Donut Head Homer, and Donut Head Homer had a higher detail rating than Millhouse, both of them did have 8.8, but once again, it's that situation. Millhouse's 8.8 is higher because it wasn't rounded, and Donut Head Homer's rating was rounded from 8.75 to make that 8.8.
Yeah, it's funny. It's really weird how the numbers crunch down, but again, it makes sense. And even funnier is that there's 3 Simpson Pops in a row. I mean, that makes sense because Funko killed it with Simpsons Pops this year. So I'm super glad to see Millhouse. And I think he is probably one of the best Simpsons Pops of the year. So I'm glad to see where he is.
All right, coming in at number 15, this is a Pop Television 2-pack from The Office. It is the Scranton Boys. This was an FYE exclusive, which had 7.8 in overall hype, 8.9 in detail, and 9.5 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.73.
This is one of like the most ideal spots for a pop to land right here. It's a brand new pop, so it's got a lot of hype for us, obviously, and this is like one of the greatest moments from The Office, in my opinion, at least. And this 2-pack is also just so cool to look at. I love what they did with this 2-pack. Landing at 15 just makes so much sense. I'm so glad that it made it this high because I think it really does deserve it.
So going on to number 14 is one I'm very surprised that it made it this high, honestly. It is number 49 in the Pop Icons lineup. It is Guy Fieri, in which this had an 8.6 in overall hype, 8.9 in detail, and 8.7 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.73, the exact same as the Scranton Boys, except the fact that it has a higher overall hype rating. It did have a lower personal reaction rating than the Scranton Boys and had the exact same rating for detail, except the fact that Guy Fieri's 8.9 was higher because it wasn't rounded and Scranton Boys was rounded.
Yeah, I'm very surprised that Guy Fieri made it this high on the list. And I'm honestly pretty thankful for that because I really love this pop. I love Guy Fieri. And I think it turned out really cool. I mean, the hair looks so great. The detail with the shirt. I love how he has a burger in his hand. They didn't have to add that, but they did, which is really nice. I could have seen this being like in the 40s region, but I'm pretty happy, honestly, that it made it so high up.
All right, number 13, it is an Ad Icons 5-pack, which, of course, once I say 5-pack, I think everyone knows where I'm going with this. From McDonald's, it is essentially the McDonald's 5-pack involving Officer Big Mac, Grimace, Ronald McDonald, Hamburglar, and Mayor McCheese, in which this was an exclusive to McDonald's merchandise store, Golden Arches Unlimited, in which this had an overall hype of 7.5, detail of 9.3, and personal reaction of 9.4, giving it an overall score of 8.73, the same as Guy Fieri, except that the detail and personal reaction ratings were higher than Guy Fieri.
I'm glad that this one made it high up, but I honestly think it should have made it into the top 5, which is crazy to say, but this was so cool. A 5-pack, like you don't see 5-packs very often. And I mean, I was just waiting for this for years. So when it finally got announced and then we got this really cool 5-pack, like I was just like, okay, this is one of my favorite pops of the year and potentially of all time.
When looking over these pops, I was predicting like this was making top 10 for sure. Like it was either going to be between number 5 and number 10. Like I was thinking like maybe like a 7 or 8. But I think obviously, of course, it's because of the overall hype, which is understandable because by the time this got released, I think they were hyped about a 5-pack. But the way that it was dealt, where you put it up on McDonald's merchandise site and then just sold out in like minutes, it definitely had to make the list because it was essentially probably the most hyped ad icon pop of the year. Then we're going to number 12, which this is number 854 in the pop animation lineup From Danny Phantom, of course, it's Danny Phantom. Now, this was a New York Comic Con shared with Target exclusive. This had a 9.1 in overall hype, 8.9 in detail, and 8.4 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.8.
Honestly, I'm surprised this made it this high. When it comes to New York Comic Con drops, I think there was stuff that was better than this one. So it's kind of weird that it made it this high. I really, really like this pop. I'm yet to own it, but I will eventually. I think it is just a little too high on the list. Not by much, though. I think it could possibly still break that like top 20 spot. But 12 is crazy. Like when you come to think of how many great pops there were this year, 12 is a crazy spot to be at. And does Danny Phantom fit that, in my opinion? Maybe, but probably not.
I'm honestly surprised. I thought just predicting this was going to be like at number 10. So only a couple spots lower than what I thought was going to be. But at the same time, I do think some people had agreed with what I have said probably a couple times on the podcast, where I truly believe that this Danny Phantom pop should have been a glow in the dark pop. And therefore, I think then it could have definitely been a top 10 pop in this top 50 list. So coming in at number 11, this is number 1040 in the pop television lineup. From How I Met Your Mother, it's Robin Sparkles. Now, this was a New York Comic Con exclusive shared with Amazon. This had a 9.2 in overall hype, 8.4 in detail, and 9 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.87.
Yeah, personally, I think that this pop is better than Danny Phantom, but again, I think it got lucky on how high it made it up. I'm actually surprised that the overall hype was a 9.2 for the people in the fandom of Funko, because, like, I honestly feel like when it comes to How I Met Your Mother, there's people that love it, but I feel like there's almost just the same amount of people that hate it as well. So I'm very surprised it got that overall hype. I wanted to see this pop do good, but, like, I just didn't think it was going to happen. This pop's great. But I think, it should have been like just breaking top 20 potentially.
I'm surprised it made it higher than Danny Phantom. But I do understand it makes sense with that 9.2 in overall hype, just because it was kind of a letdown of what we had gotten with Barney Stinson and Ted Mosby, the common pops, just because of the way that they looked. And this was a super refresher, and it was a pop that people wanted. It's cool that they ended up making this pop to kind of bring up the hype more on that How I Met Your Mother set. And of course, there definitely had to be a How I Met Your Mother pop in this top 50 list, because it was one of the most requested licensors that fans have been wanting for years. So it definitely was good that we added a How I Met Your Mother pop, and it was definitely good that it was this pop that we chose to add to that list. But yeah, I'm surprised it made it up this high. All right, so now we're at the top 10. It is going to be insane. So number 77 in the pop WWE lineup. The Fiend Bray Wyatt. Now, this was an Amazon exclusive, and this had an 8.2 in overall hype, 9.3 in detail, and 9.1 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.87. Same overall score as Robin Sparkles, except it had a higher detail and personal reaction rating.
I love this pop. This is definitely one of the best pops of the year. It looks so great, and it's probably one of my favorite WWE pops that have ever come out. I mean, The Fiend is just such a cool character, so just the idea of having a pop of it is so great. And when we finally received these pops and we looked at the detail, we knew what we had to do with the top 10 list. We had to let him in.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that this pop made it into the top 10, just because WWE is one of those lineups where I feel like some pops wouldn't have a big overall hype rating, essentially because of the fact it's one of those lineups where there's so many different wrestlers per se where people would request it, so not a lot of hype would go towards these. But I will give credit that some of these pops, especially this one, some of the ratings that have helped out. If it was a certain exclusive, so example, Amazon, I would look at the Amazon ratings, and I would also calculate those overall hypes mixing up with the actual social media posts to get some sort of median number along with that. So it's kind of understandable of how it's 8.2 in that sense, although it probably would have been lower if I didn't do that. But of course, also, we're huge WWE fans. So essentially, even though we do make these top 50 lists and we don't make it so much about us and we we try to add pops that like we know that everyone else likes also, and we knew like overall it'd be a top 50, but it's guaranteed, if you know us personally, we're going to be adding at least one WWE pop to a top 50 list. I'm glad it made the top 10, honestly, because it probably is like one of my top 10 favorite pops that were released this year. So coming in at number 9, this is number 3 in the pop comedians lineup. From Jeff Dunham, it is Jeff Dunham and Peanut. Now, this was an exclusive to jeffdunham.com. This had an 8.9 in overall hype, 8.6 in detail, and 9.2 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 8.9.
This is a weird one because I love this pop and I can't wait to own it. Hopefully, I can still get one. But at the same time, I feel like it's criminal that this is in our top 10 list because without that peanut, this pop is really just a very plain pop. So I guess that kind of is the saving grace, is the peanut that he comes with. I honestly think this could have been in the 30s, which is crazy because it made it to number 9.
So moving on to number 8, this is number 15 in the Pop Towns lineup. From Back to the Future, it is the Doc Brown with the clock tower. This had a 9.3 in overall hype, 9.5 in detail, and 8.2 in personal reaction, giving it an even 9 out of 10 overall score.
Yeah, I mean, number 8 kind of seems like a great spot for this because honestly, this is one of the best pop towns of all time. I mean, obviously, pop towns haven't been around for a super long time, but this is a really, really great one. I love the added detail of the lightning actually striking. And the pop itself of Doc Brown is one of the better ones, I would say. There's a lot of ones that just are good but aren't amazing, but this one, like, kind of really looks like him a lot. So I think it does deserve to be in the top 10 list.
And now this next pop coming in at number 7. This is number 368 in the pop Star Wars lineup. From The Mandalorian, it is The Child. And I'm talking about the first Child pop that was released, the common, in which this had a 9.6 in overall hype, 8.6 in detail, and 8.9 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 9.03.
I'm not surprised that this made the top 10 list. It makes so much sense. I think this should have been number 1. And just because the fact that this pop is great, I mean, we wanted to see a child pop and we got to see it. I mean, there are some that are kind of better in the sense because there's a lot more going on with the pop now. But this one was great, and it's the most sold pop figure of all time, which just speaks volumes. I think that really suggests that this should have been, and possibly will be for a lot of other people, the number 1 pop of the year.
Yeah, I was super surprised that not only did this not make it in the top 5 portion of this top 50 list, I thought this was going to be number 2. What my opinion of number 1 is, well, you'll have to find out in just a little bit. But what I can say that this is number 1 of is that this is the number 1 common pop of this entire list, because the next 6 pops we're going to mention are all exclusive pops. So I guess the child will be taking home a number 1 of something, and that is being the best common pop of this entire top 50 list. Moving on to number 6. This is also a Pop Town. This is number 20 in the Pop Town lineup. From the Disneyland 65th anniversary lineup, it is the Walt Disney and Sleeping Beauty Castle Pop Town. This was a Disney Parks exclusive, in which this had a 9.6 in overall hype, 9.1 in detail, and 8.4 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 9.03, the same as the child, except even though that it does have a higher detail rating than the child, but has a lower personal reaction rating than the child. They both scored a 9.6, but yet again, it was the fact that not only was higher because of rounding, but both of these 9.6 scores were rounded, as the child was rounded from 9.55 and Walt Disney was rounded from 9.63.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised, I guess, that this got so high because I know the overall hype was huge with this pop. But at the same time, I don't think it's really a top 10 pop. if I could place a number on it, I think like 13 or 14 would be the number I would give it. But it's just really, really cool because you get that Pop Town, which looks so great. Like, Sleeping Beauty's castle is obviously iconic for the Disney franchise, and it looks really, really cool in pop form. And then you have Walt Disney, which is a pop that, like, I never really even thought of that we could see like a Walt Disney pop, but it makes a lot of sense and it looks really, really great. And they even gave him like the Mickey plush in his hands, which was very heartfelt. I really, really enjoy this pop.
Yeah, and this was also one of those pops where it just made the cut for our list because as we are recording this, it is December 12th, I believe, and this released literally, I think, exactly a week ago. So it just made the cut. If not, this probably would have ended up being in our honorable mentions. Then coming in at number 5, it is number 673 in the Pop Marvel lineup from Absolute Carnage. It is the Absolute Carnage on Headstone Pop Deluxe. This was a previews exclusive, and this had an overall hype rating of 9.6, a detail rating of 9.5, and a personal reaction of 8, giving it an overall score of 9.03, same as Walt Disney and the Child. And although it does have a higher detail rating, it does have a lower personal reaction rating than Walt Disney, and they both scored a 9.6. But once again, it's that rounding. But listen, everyone, to how close this rounding was. Walt Disney was 9.63, like I'd mentioned earlier, but Absolute Carnage was 9.64. 0.01 higher than Walt Disney.
I think that at number 5, this is a perfect spot for this pop. This pop has so much detail and it looks so cool. I mean, there's just so much that looks so good on this thing. Whether it's the headstones with the different characters of other Marvel characters, or it's those skulls which look really, really neat.
Coming in at number 4, this is number 886 in the Pop animation lineup. From Yu-Gi-Oh! It is Yami Merrick. Now, this was a Toy Temple exclusive, and this had an overall hype of 8.6, detail of 9.3, and personal reaction of 9.3, giving it an overall score of 9.07.
Yeah, so again, this is one of those pops that I absolutely love, but I think this pop could have been around somewhere in between like 22 to 19, maybe. Being at number 4 is crazy. I mean, I respect it because this pop is crazy. This is a great looking pop, but I just think it's rated a little bit too high.
Coming in at number 3, this is number 834 in the Pop animation lineup. From SpongeBob SquarePants, it is Mermaid Man. Now, this was a New York Comic Con exclusive shared with Entertainment Earth. This had a 9.5 in overall hype, 9.1 in detail, and 9.4 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 9.33.
This pop looks so good. There's a lot of detail that's going on there. And again, like I said with Barnacle Boy, it's an animated character, so that's kind of hard to get across. But this body looks great. I mean, there's a lot of different colors. There's kind of some different textures in a sense with like the slippers or the hair compared to the costume itself. I think if I were to make my own top 50 list, I honestly think that Mermaid Man would fall exactly at number 3.
So now we'll talk about number 2 before going into our honorable mentions, which coming in at number 2, it actually is not a part of any, I guess, licensor lineups or even lineups like animation, Marvel, television, or that in general. It is essentially a Pop Funko special edition since it doesn't have a number on it. And it is the Bushfire Heroes Pop. Now, this was exclusive to Pop Culture in Australia. This had a 9.7 in overall hype, 8.5 in detail, and 9.8 in personal reaction, giving it an overall score of 9.33. That's the same overall score as Mermaid Man, except the fact that it has a higher overall hype and personal reaction rating.
Yeah, the Bushfire Heroes pop is so crazy, and it's hard to talk about this pop without getting emotional because this pop was just so amazing how Funko donated the proceeds of this pop to Australia to help with the bushfires. This pop is truly amazing. I love the detail, and I love the posing on it. Like, the head of the firefighter is like a little off-centered, which is perfect because it's kind of showing that he's kind of looking down at the koala. The koala also looks very, very nice, which is so cool. I honestly think that number 2 is a little bit high. I think it should have been like number 4. So not much lower on the list. Obviously, number 4 is also a great spot.
So I guess now we will move on to our honorable mentions, which will list off some pops that we personally like and didn't make the top 50 list, or even pops that we possibly may have pitched to each other and one of us denied it. So I'll kick off first with this. Both of the Rock'em Sock'em robots. Now, this definitely is my favorite retro toys pop of that entire lineup. But the fact is like, they were 2 single pops, which is why they didn't make that top 50 list. Like, if there was a 2-pack, I think we definitely would have considered adding this to the top 50 list. Then one I actually have is the 10-inch Disco Skeletor from Masters of the Universe. I thought this was a great pop, and it would have been a cool Masters of the Universe pop to add to the top 50 list. But of course, it was something we couldn't agree on, so it didn't make the top 50 list. Then I have the 10-inch Mandalorian with Child, which is a really great pop, not just because of the fact that it's a 10-inch, but because you have a little 2-for-1 deal where you got the Mando with the Child, and the pop has like a metallic-y chrome finish, which is great. Then I have Mr. Peanut listed down, which is also a little surprising because as we recorded this actually released on the Funko Shop website, now becoming a 2020 pop and not a 2021 pop like we thought it was going to be, because this was going to be a big consideration for the top 50 list of 2021 next year. And then I had to save this one for last, and that is Obelisk the Tormentor from Yu-Gi-Oh! This pop ended up turning so much better than what Funko had originally posted from New York Toy Fair. It had this ugly teal color from the original photo, but now it has this great blue color, and it just turned out so well. And I think even MD would agree on this when thinking about adding Yu-Gi-Oh! Pops. We were dumbasses, and last year we forgot to add Dark Magician to that list, which still kind of haunts me to this day that we did not add Dark Magician to that top 50 list, because it should have, and it was an amazing pop. So I thought to make up for it, we would add 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Pops to this top 50 list, and essentially it totally made sense that we would pick 1 dual monster and 1 human.
I'll start off with Quavo from Migos from the Papa Rocks lineup. I think that was like the best Migos pop. I thought those were great, and they were a big surprise last year when they got announced, and then finally coming out this year was really, really great. So it was really cool to see Quavo. Then I have a few ad icons, so I'm going to group 3 of them together, and that was the Slush Puppy, Mr. Peanut, and Punchy, because they kind of all had the same kind of release time. I mean, Slush Puppy was a crazy announcement. I was stoked for Slush Puppy. Same with Mr. Peanut and with Punchy, but I really think that Slush Puppy was like the crazy one out of that. Then I have one last ad icon, and that is Lil Sweet. This pop turned out very, very nice. And I love the way that we were able to obtain this pop. Obviously, we couldn't really do it in Canada, but just buying Dr. Pepper's and kind of like sending out to get this pop is just so cool. I love that idea, and the pop turned out really, really great. And then my last one, I have Earl Sinclair from the Dinosaurs lineup, because that pop looked ridiculously good for what it is.
All right, so it is the moment we have all been waiting for. Which pop is the number 1 Funko Pop of 2020 out of this top 50 list? Which, without further ado, this is number 580 in the Pop Marvel lineup. From Avengers Endgame, it is the glow-in-the-dark Iron Man, or in quotations, I am Iron Man, which this was a previews exclusive. This had an overall hype rating of 9.7, detail rating of 9.4, and a personal reaction rating of 9.3, giving it an overall score of 9.47.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really not surprised that this made it to number 1, because this is a great pop. In my opinion, this should have been number 2. Obviously, I voiced my opinion on what should have been number 1. This is a great pop, no matter what. I mean, there's so much detail going on, and it's just like another one of those pops, which is really funny how like the second pop on our list and the first pop on our list are like super emotional pops. And I mean, I guess that's a good thing, honestly.
So to confirm what I said earlier when I was going to say say what I thought was personally the number one pop of 2020, it was this one. And I think a lot of people's favorites of this year. When you think about our top 50 list last year, we had the other Iron Man or Tony Stark with the gauntlet that was New York Comic Con. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, that made it in like the early 40s on that top 50 list, to kind of give a little bit of a spoiler. But it's crazy to me how essentially those two variants of Iron Man kind of went full circle, where it's nearly at the bottom of the list in 2019, but then it becomes the number one pop in 2020. And I think it deserves to be the number one pop because it's what everyone wanted. There are times when Funko makes some horrible pops, like example, anything that's really the one color chrome. But for every disgusting chrome pop, there's an amazing pop like this I Am Iron Man pop. But anyways, guys, that's going to be the end of this week's podcast. If you enjoyed this top 50 list of 2020 Funko Pops, make sure you smash that like button. Comment in the comment section below on what your favorite pop from the entire year of 2020 was. Press that subscribe button for more content like this podcast and any other videos we do on the channel in the future. And press the little bell beside it to be notified of when that future content gets released.
Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at a Funko Popcast. It'll be listed in the description below.
But anyways, guys, thank you for listening to this top 50 Funko Pops list of 2020. We hope to see you guys next year for our 2021 list, and we hope to see you guys next week for our podcast featuring special guest, Chris Sully. 1, 2, 3, I'm out of here.
Peace in, peace out.